Hello, today I'm reviewing the brand new Cooler Master MasterBox 520 mesh, but before we get into the review, if you do enjoy this video, please remember to give it a thumbs up, and if you're not currently subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. Okay, let's take a closer look at the case. To remove the tempered glass side panel, there's an uncaptive thumb screw at the back which needs to be removed. Then the panel can simply be tilted away from the top, lifted up and away. To remove the other side panel, there's two captive thumb screws at the back. Once these have been loosened, the panel can be slid backwards, tilted out and lifted away. Taking a look at the case's front I/O, we've got a USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C port, a single USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A port, a power button, a combined headphone and microphone jack, and a button to control the case's built-in ARGB controller. At the top of the case, we've got a mesh dust filter which is magnetically attached and can simply be pulled away at the back. To give better access for the building process, the top of the case is removable. It's held on with two screws at the front, and once these have been removed, the panel can simply be tilted up and lifted away. At the bottom of the case, we've got a tray-style dust filter which can simply be pulled out from the back. The mesh front panel can simply be pulled off from the front, and if we take a look at the back of the panel, you'll see there's no dust filters, and Cooler Master are going with just mesh at the front of the case. With the front panel removed, you can see the three CF120 ARGB fans that come pre-installed at the front. If you prefer, you can mount up to two 140mm fans. Take a look behind the front pre-installed fans, you'll notice we've got a large cutout extending down to the bottom of the case. This space is large enough to fit up to a 360mm radiator and set of fans on the inside of the case. It's exactly the same story at the top of the case, where you can fit either three 120mm fans or two 140mm fans, and up to a 360 or 280mm radiator. At the rear of the case, it's up to a 120mm fan or 120mm radiator. In terms of motherboard support, the case will accommodate up to EATX motherboards, and if you're thinking of air cleaning the case, the maximum height for CPU cooler support is 165mm. The case features 7 horizontal PCI expansion slots, and you're not going to have any problem fitting large graphics cards, with graphics cards up to 410mm in length being supported. Moving into the rear of the case, you can see we've got plenty of cutouts going through to the main body of the case, and the three large cutouts over to the right hand side of the motherboard have rubber grommets on them. There also looks to be plenty of cable tie-down points. We can see the case's built-in fan-stroke ARGB controller, and the three pre-installed front fans are already connected up to the controller. It is important to note that the pre-installed fans have 3-pin connectors, and we've got one spare 3-pin fan connector and two ARGB connectors left on the controller for additional devices. In terms of drive mounting locations, you can mount two 2.5-inch drives on the rear of the case, and I'm a big fan of Cooler Master's mounting mechanism, where you simply screw pins into the back of the SSD and push it into the rubber grommets. In terms of power supply support, the case does accommodate full-sized ATX power supplies up to a maximum length of 200mm, although if you do remove the hard drive cage, you're going to have absolutely loads of space at the bottom for your power supply. We don't have a removable power supply bracket at the back of the case, so you are going to have to slide your power supply in from the side and screw it in from the back. We've got a hard drive cage down at the bottom of the case, and the position of the hard drive cage is adjustable. If you prefer, you can fully remove the hard drive cage. We can mount a further 2.5-inch drive on top of the hard drive cage, with two 3.5-inch drives in the drive cage itself. So what I want to do now is give you a look at the build I put together in the case. So I think you'll agree the build looks great, but what about the temperatures? So our i7-12700K idled at 30 degrees and reached a maximum of 83 degrees during a 10-minute IDA64 stability test. Our ROG STRIX RTX 3080 idled at 31 degrees and reached a maximum of 65 degrees during the stability test. In terms of noise levels, the average noise levels at idle were 36 decibels, and during load it was 48 decibels. So in terms of the temperatures, these are actually fairly good. With a 360mm AIO with this particular CPU, having it set to exhaust at the top, the temperatures are actually better than what I would be expecting. The GPU would be what I would expect in a case that's got a reasonable amount of airflow. So the temperatures themselves are very good with the particular configuration that I've set up. Noise levels are in that moderate range, which again is very acceptable given the number of fans I've installed in the case. So now I want to come on to my experience of having built in the case, and this case in particular is really straightforward to build in. It's a large case. The fact that you can remove the top panel, giving you great access to the build, meant I had no problems at all. I've also got plenty of space with the IO installed at the top underneath to reach the top fan headers on the motherboard, so there really isn't anything to catch you out in this case. The only thing, there is a large cutout at the front of the case, and if you're not installing the radiator there, just take care with your cables at the bottom, they're not spilling over into that cutout where they can be seen from the front of the case. But in reality, you should have a very smooth building experience in this case. So the next thing I want to do is share what I liked about the MasterBox 520 mesh. And I think the first thing to say is the build quality in this case was very good throughout, and I had no issues at all with it. I really enjoyed having the removable top panel. I think it was great to have 3 ARGB fans pre-installed at the front and having these already connected up to the included fan and ARGB hub. As well, it was good to have motherboard control for both ARGB and for fan speed. So this brings me on to the things I didn't like, and the first thing to mention is the front mesh panel. I don't think it looks particularly bad, but I also don't think it looks particularly good. It just looks ordinary, and certainly when you compare this to something like the TD500 mesh, which really stood out, there's nothing about the front mesh panel that makes this case stand out. The second thing I didn't like was the fact that we've only got one USB Type A port at the front of the case, and with exactly the same cable plugged into the motherboard, we could have 2. In terms of the included case fans, it's great to have 3 fans included with ARGB on them, but unfortunately the fans have 3-pin fan connectors, so you're going to have to run them in DC mode rather than PWM mode, and it's also a little bit of a shame that there wasn't a rear case fan included. Another thing I wasn't a big fan of was the large cutout at the front of the case, which allows you to install a radiator instead of fans down to the bottom compartment. What some other cases have done is they include an adjustable cover that covers this over if you're just going with the fans at the front. So this would really be something I wish Cooler Master had have done rather than just leaving you with a large cutout. Cutouts is another thing I want to mention. While it's great that we've got rubber grommets on the 3 main cutouts going through to the front of the case, I did feel that the cutouts down beneath the motherboard were a little bit far towards the center of the motherboard. And when we were installing the front panel connectors, there was a large amount of cable running over the main body of the case to that bottom right hand side of the motherboard, and it would be much better if there was a cutout directly underneath it. While we're on the front panel connectors, it was a bit of a shame now that they were individual cables rather than a single header that you plugged directly in, and I know Cooler Master have done that in some of their other cases. Also, what I was a little bit disappointed with was there was no actual cutout that was big enough to bring the PCIe cables directly from the power supply compartment, and we had to run them up the back of the case. While I didn't have any issues with cable management because there was a fair amount of space at the back, I much prefer having a cutout directly from the power supply compartment where you can bring the cables through and then you don't have to manage those cables at the back of the case. So we've now reached the point in the review where I need to tell you, should you go out and get the MasterBox 520 mesh? So looking at the price at the moment, you can pre-order this case in the UK for just under £97, and for that price you're getting yourself a pretty good looking case. You're getting good build quality, you're getting 3 ARGB fans, an ARGB hub and fan hub, and front panel Type-C connectivity. And as the price of everything has now gone up, at £97, this is really what I would expect you to be getting for that money. The one slight issue for me is what you're not getting for your money, and that is the wow factor, or something that makes this case stand out from all the other cases. For example, I've compared this already to the TD500 mesh, which I absolutely loved from Cooler Master, and the mesh front panel in that case really stood out because of its design. It was different from everything else, and I absolutely loved the little cutouts in the glass, which made the case just completely stand out. And while this case looks good, there's just nothing that makes it stand out from a lot of the other cases on the market. So for me, this is definitely a good case, but it's not a brilliant case, or it's not a case with new innovative features that are going to make you choose it over something else. So if you do like this case and you want to pick it up, you'll be getting a solid case with mid-range features that you paid for, but not the premium features that you haven't paid for. So if you have enjoyed this review, like I said at the start, please remember to give it a thumbs up. And if you're not currently subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button as well. Remember, I have done a full step-by-step build guide in the case, so if you are thinking of getting it, you're probably going to want to check out that build guide as well. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.